Hi there, Randy Green here, and welcome to podcast 3 in the Higher Order Senses Exercise course. So, where do I want to go with the removal of the chakra system? I have talked about that many times, and I'll not do what I used to talk about back in the 2017, as well as exemplified in my book material, where I talk about how we transform the chakra system into the general holographic architecture, where we have the brain field, we have the heart field, and we have the root vortex, as I call it. The root vortex connects to the biofield, the heart to the vibrational field, and the brain field connects to the radiation field. So that means that these are 3 different types of vortices that we can reactivate inside our physicality. And to get there, many of us, we have had the chakra system. Some have not had the chakra system. And that's why for those of us who have had the chakra system, the first challenge will, of course, be to remove what we have generated. I have it as part of a past life, so it reactivated naturally when I began to work with the esoteric teaching system, including knowing that there were levels to it that were not mentioned in what we call the most normal approaches to the chakra system that we can find on the internet. So with that understanding, there were already insertions that I had, and that past life were so far back where we could say. And when I look into that past life, it is in India and it's very, very far back. And what I get is it was in the early stages of the Aryans that came with what we would understand as the understandings of a new approach to reality. And in many ways, as they migrated into the Indus Valley, took over the original solar humanities that used to exist there. The Aryans are lunars. They came from civilizations that were rooted into the lunar scheme and their sciences of how to work with energy. And the solar civilizations that were in the ancient cultures that were on our planet, of course, we are still talking after the colonization, but the early stages of it, they held what we could say another approach to the energy system. And I can't go that far back because that's a completely different configuration. So we could say the chakra system in as many ways and forms based upon lunar technology. And that's why it's important for us to get rid of it, because we're not lunars. Our body is connected to what we could say different types of energies that are fused with energies from the moon. And the moon is not what we think it is, but I'm not going to go into explanations of what the moon is, other than just saying it's an artificial planetoid that we use as a craft to access into our reality, and by there transformed into what we would see as that round, dissolving body that is positioned in the night sky. However, that appears with its different configurations that are hidden in the higher order levels of its configuration, that gives it a different feature altogether than what we are seeing in the night sky. I'm not going to go into the holographic properties of the reality sciences of our solar system. That must be looked into another place, another time. But here we understand we're kind of having we have the radiation field, the vibrational field, and the biofield. And these are the original configurations of our higher order energetic architecture. Then we have the lower fields that were inserted, and the biofield and the mental field are connected to the third cycle energies. The vibrational field or the emotional field and whatever we have of material there is connected to the vibrational field and were originally connected to the original 4th cycle. So these are all put in place as an artificial insertion that covers up the original holographic energetic blueprint of this solar system. So that's the most important thing for us to remember. When we then look at our body as it is today, our bodies as they are today, we then say, okay, we know for a certainty we have a peripheral nervous system. And we have what we could say a central nervous system. Now, could say we have a central nervous system. These are two different forms of nervous systems that have different forms of functionality. Look that up, look the anatomy up on the internet. Central nervous system connected to the brain and the processes of the brain and the commands of the brain. The peripheral nervous system connected to the organs and to the bodily functions. The peripheral nervous system can be divided into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, where the latter is typically considered to be quite instinctual. The instinctual level is the one that ties into our biofield, and that's the one that's built upon quote-unquote etheric energies, and quite a lot of what we understand to be etheric energies are lunar energies. And they are based upon third cycle types of configuration that matches the configuration of the lunar scheme that came here, and with them brought what we could say renewed type of third cycle energies to avert what we call the inverted type of third cycle energies that had grown exponentially inside the solar system after the timeline event. So they came with something that were seen as important to try and withstand the infusion of the energies of the abyss. With that, we also understand that the meridian system that's connected to the etheric field is then lodged into the lunar levels of our biofield. But the meridian system itself is connected to the vibrational field and were in its origin golden solar energies. So that's also an interesting reconfiguration that happened of the meridian system, changing it from the original, what we could call middle domain configuration of the vibrational field into the outer domain configuration infused with lunar energies. When we then begin to look at this buildup of lunar energies with what we could call an artificial insertion now of the middle domain and an artificial insertion of what we call radiation energies of our mind field that is now being run by mental energies that are connected to the frequency fence and hence are controlling the central nervous system, and by that the core of our genetics. And I'm here talking about the human bio-DNA, which I talk about in both the high order transition sciences as well as the advanced clearing work with the inserted alien technology. So we are there in that understanding when we begin to work with, okay, we are, instead of looking at our body from an angle of the chakra system, let us look at our body as I talk about in the whole basic 4D energy work. Let's look at the heart itself as an organ. What is infused into the heart? Well, it is, aside from what we know from anatomy of blood and electric currents, we have the synodal network of electricity that pumps the heart. We have the synode that kind of initiates the pump and how the heart works. You should look that up. That's not what I'm going to teach you here, because again, I did this course material in Danish. I have done it in English as well, but since I already got it, I don't need to look at it from that anatomy angle of general sciences. I look at it from an energetic angle. So you must do the general sciences on your own to understand the human physiology as general science perceive it. I want to talk about the human physiology energetically, and with that understanding of why it's important to begin to work with our organs as well as our body to achieve the higher order senses. And the chakra system is in a way a good way to begin this. Instead of seeing it as the chakra system, as I talk about in the basic energy work too, we could say that where the etheric field and the meridian system, the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system meet up in the nodal points are where we have bundles of nerves that meet up together. And they are, interestingly enough, positioned where the chakras are also positioned. We have a huge bundle of nerves that goes into the sacrum, that is the bottom of our body between our anus and our genitals. We have this huge bottom of the spine that are going into the legs and the whole lower area of our body with the different nerves, that both our peripheral nervous system as well as central nervous system that meet up there. We have some important meridians that also go to the feet, that are part of the legs, that are part of the lymphatic system as well. Look that up. The lymph nodes, how they are also connected, typically in this very heavily loaded nervous system nodal points. And we have, again, we go with the ancient type of chakra system teachings. There actually isn't a hara that is positioned where females have their uterus. It is often conflated with the spleen chakra, which both males and females have. So we don't really have the hara chakra as it's been put in. That's often associated with sexuality. I would instead recommend that you look into your glands there, work with the glands. Females work with your uterus, learn to understand your uterus as an organ, and males work with your testes as an organ itself, as well as your penis, as well as females are also to work with the vagina. So these are tied to, as we know from tarology, there are some alien technology going on there that goes with the insectoid level that ties this physicality into sexual activity that is derived from what we call mammal combinations that are tied to the sexuality of animals as well, but animals do not have sexual desires as we have. They are for pure procreation. And we were supposed to have that pure reproduction as well, and not all of these emotional addings to it as it's been. And that is technically what the hara chakra is. That's the desire energies from the emotional field that are connected into the reproduction glands themselves that are purely insectoid with mammal genetics, just meant there to reproduce what we call eggs and sperm that allows for the merge of egg and sperm into the fetal pattern, the basic cluster of cells that can possibly produce a human child inside the womb of a female. And I'm not going to go into that as well, because there are much more to that little equation there than what I have shared so far. That's for much, much later down the line, where people are more in the understanding of how the human anatomy actually works as energy, and how holographic energetic reality fields can manifest physical matter, but it comes from the fourth dimension. It always begins in the fourth dimension and then breaches in to via the quantum field and via the core of our cellular structure into what we call organic matter that manifests via the lunar biofield into solidified matter as we understand of it. So with that, we understand, well, when we work with the hara, both males and females, we work with our genitals as well as the glands that produces eggs and sperm. And the idea is there to remove the emotional content. Female uteruses are connected to the heart. Males their genitals are more connected because it's so positioned so low in the root chakra and the root vortex itself, connect to the biofield and connected to the brain, which means that the male genitals are connected to the brain, which we know, right? And female, the uterus and female organs, sexual organs, are connected to the heart, which we also know. So the females are very much about producing oxytocin and connecting via the sexual activity in reproduction and create the little new tribe where she will be the caretaker, whereas the males are more prone to be the ones that come in and deliver what needs to be delivered, but are still very focused on what we could say spreading the alpha gene, especially if they have a high productivity rate and are part of the breeder programs. But that's, again, another level I won't touch here. When we go to the solar plexus, there we can all talk about males and females alike. Aside from the female solar plexus, again connected more to the heart chakra, and by that the emotionality, as well as what we could say the amygdala and the hypothalamus that works in a different way, that are more prone to what we say flight, fear and flight dynamics, where the limbic system is more oriented towards self-protection. And because it is as females, we are physically speaking, having a body that is more vulnerable compared to the male body that is engineered in a different way. The male skin, for instance, is thicker due to testosterone. It has a higher adrenaline production. It is more connected to the fight level of the amygdala and the limbic system. The brain processes work in a more simplified manner, more focused on one thing at a time, where the females are highly oriented into holistic thinking, speculating about all the things that needs to be thought through, very considerate. The heart energies are used in ways that often are tied into frustration, or often in doubt, or in ways and forms that are looking into being worried about things, whereas males are not prone to the same level due to the testosterone. So the female estrogen works in a different manner with the physical anatomy of the female, including giving her softer skin, a more sensitive level of skin, a more sensitive body, a more receptive body, and at the same time also a body that can be a very profound and important caregiver in both relationships, as well as in the interaction with animals, as well as children. But it renders her more vulnerable. The same, we could say, male have the ability to produce oxytocin, and they do in the connection with the female, and they do in the relationship with the females. That's where they shift more into the X chromosome, where the oxytocin level will grow and in a way outweigh the testosterone. Whereas if they are on their own, they are still very much into their alpha male seeding my sperm program, which pushes them more into the Y chromosome, where they are more interested in conquering space and conquering whatever they need to conquer to achieve what they set of goals. So this, of course, affects the peripheral nervous system as well as the central nervous system, both males and females, and that is connected to the solar plexus. So the solar plexus of males are again more connected to the brain, less to the heart. The females are again connected more to the heart and less to at least the left hemisphere, more to the right hemisphere. The male is connected more to the left hemisphere and less to the right hemisphere. And here we're talking about the right hemisphere as the part of the brain that has a tendency, as long as we both have a left and right hemisphere, it is more with the visual content, whereas the left hemisphere is more the abstract. And we'll just keep it simplified like that. Language is typically in the left hemisphere. Image production is at the back of the head in the visual cortex. So it's not just the old way of putting up the brain as left and right, because it can change and it can be dissimilar, and we could train our brain to connect these two hemispheres so that they will work in unison instead of being divided in between two different types of configurations. But they are, per definition, we could say the left is more concerned about the spatial energy, so the outer circumstances, where the right is more with the content of it, the inner and the outer. So that's also another way to perceive the brain. So with that, we understand we have the heart, that in females are more oriented towards what we say emotional processes, where the male heart is more oriented towards what we say conquering processes that are more mental of origin. So the male heart, interestingly enough, is also bigger. It is connected more to the blood flow of the brain, which females have, of course, as well. But our blood flow works in a different way because our heart is smaller. We have more oxytocin. We have a more gentle approach, typically, unless we get upset or unless we get infused with different forms of energetic entities that females, unfortunately, have a tendency to connect to in various forms, because we have this still semi-functional Kalakar code, whereas males to a large degree has been so dimmed down that they barely have it anymore. But they have a connectivity from brain to brain, so to speak, but often via different forms of inverted third cycle communication, telepathic skills that goes with very little heart connection. So for both males and females, the main level for us to work with to begin with is the solar plexus area and our personality structure, as well as our heart area, and how we are differently approaching what it means to be kind and what kindness is and what self-nurturing is for both males and females. And that is for us to discover. Then we have the throat area, which is connected to both breathing as well as speaking, as well as expressing who and what we are energetically. That's connected to the throat, where we are also having different types of nodal points that goes in there. We have the thyroid that controls the metabolistic enzymes in the body, which is very important, whereas we have the heart field is connected to the thymus and the immune system. So we are having these two different approaches in the thymus as well as in the thyroid that have an important impact on how our body works in its different processes of energy. The thymus will connect to the glands, and as we become kinder and more self-nurturing, we will also be less stressed. We will have less anxiety. We will have less worries, especially if you meditate on top, both males and females. Males to silence their brain processes and not always thinking that they need to change the world or do something. And I here mean that in a way as in changing in their version of what they want it to be, whatever that means, as a means of self-proof and ambition. Whereas the females, they are more oriented towards the inner world and the connectivity with others, and thereby having a lot of thought processes that can be to the female detrimental self-nurturing abilities, because the concern about what others mean and feel and think about who and what we are and what we do sometimes wear us out and stresses us out. So these are two different approaches to the meditation practice of males and females, what we want to achieve there and how we want to activate the heart field. Men are to learn to be more humble. Female are to learn to, in their inclusivity, also be more empowered. So these are two different types of heart field meditation practices. The brain itself has different centers in it, and I will not touch much ground with that here other than the Altamaya, which I talked about in the whole integration class 6, the pineal gland, as well as the pituitary gland, and how they can work together to produce the triangle in the head that will allow for higher order perception. This upper triangle and these three, the pituitary gland are connected to the emotional field and the peripheral nervous system. So once we change our peripheral nervous system into becoming more sensitive, we do that by changing our diet. Become a plant fruitarian and your peripheral nervous system will kickstart on its own. Begin to do meditation practice, self-healing, as well as self-nurturing, doing the 4D clearing work. Your peripheral nervous system will kickstart and begin to push things to the surface that can then be cleaned out and be pulled out using the hands-on method, as I teach you in the basic 4D energy work. When we talk about the processes of the mind and the central nervous system, that's where meditation in vertical position comes in, silencing the mind and begin to learn to introspect the inner realms, especially for men, but also for females. The shift is not as much the inner introspection, because we already do that all the time, but actually to go in and say, how do I take care of myself? Because females are per default engineered to take care of others, very little to take care of themselves. Males are per definition engineered to take care of themselves, but use that to impose it onto reality. Everything is through their projection mechanism of who and what they are, believing that the others are the same as they are, and have little understanding and empathy for other people and understanding of how other people actually work. Whereas females are conditioned into that program from very early on, being so concerned about others that they sometimes actually make up ideas of what others think or see them as. So they are also creating projections. So the first very important thing in the mindfulness practices is to stop the projection, is to stop imposing our ideas of who and what we are and what we believe about reality onto others, and really just learn to be centered in our own physicality, in our own inner processes, as well as exploring what is our emotional field made of, what is our mental field made of, what are the thought processes, and what are the emotional processes. And here we can work with the peripheral nervous system and the different access points through the solar plexus and the heart to work with the peripheral nervous system and the emotional field, upgrading that. We can do double hand position on the solar plexus, dissolving whatever energies that are there. Always do begin a round of clearing work to see flames of bright white bluish flames that just clears the solar plexus, so it just becomes a slow vortex that connects the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system in one unison, so they interlink with each other, and whatever is in the way of this interconnectedness will fall away, dustify, and cease to exist. Parasites will probably, energetic parasites will surface and needs to be pulled out. This is a constant clearing work that must be happening every single day, including energetic parasites from the heart field. Once we begin to connect and activate the thymus again, which has kind of gone dormant, the moment we go into our teens, it begins its deactivation processes and goes dormant. We need to reactivate it again, so we kind of get connected to the lymphatic system by our double hand position, our self-nurturing, our giving ourselves golden energy to amplify the lymphatic system with what we could say intentions of caring, nurturing energy that will grant a better health eventually, because then we go back to the innocent states of the body where we are calm and in the general understanding that the world is a place where we can play. That's the state of innocence that goes with the thymus and a better health. And not all of this worrying and having anxiety of this and that and whatever, or wanting to go out and conquer the world, or worry about money, as men often do, as well as work and ambitions and career and what have you. All being stressed out. So we must calm ourselves down in that self-nurture that goes with the innocent part of us, so we understand, well, the world is ours to be in. And again, I know this is not actually how it is, but it's good to learn to be able to go into that modality of innocence, and by that operate in a caring approach to our bodily functions, because the body elemental itself is like a child, as I talked about. Once we have learned to master the solar plexus and the heart, then it's easier for us to communicate with the body elemental, because it's highly tied to our inner child and is highly connected to our more innocent processes. All it really cares about is keeping the body healthy, because it knows that this body is its house. And if the body's not working well, then it is the end of the body elemental. So that's what is very much focused on: security and safety and health. So as long as that's not working well due to energetic parasites, and it doesn't really know how to do that because it is living inside our body, and by that has not got the full access to the exterior as we have with the human mind and the eyes and the ears and the way the brain works. And that's part of the central nervous system, which the body elemental is not really connected to. It's tied into it, but it has no control of what we could say the physical processes of it, or other than what we have in the little brain. So the big brain is connected to the central nervous system, and that is often connected to different forms of energetic parasites that are connected to our solar plexus area, which we then clear out. And once we have cleared that out and begin to really integrate our psychological processes, renewed and looked at, again, creating a personality that we actually can be proud of and feel, yes, this is how I want to be, and be confident in that, and rearrange our limbic system, we can then relax in a manner that allows what we could say the central nervous system to expose what it holds of energetic parasites. That's also part of meditation, being able to go in and introspect and see, okay, what's going on with these electric magnetic fields and what are connected to them in our different types of emotional and mental patterns, the way we think about things, as well as the way we feel about things. Exploring how we feel about things will typically lead us to emotional patterns where we can then begin to release the energetic parasites, and with that begin to release all of the tension and all of the distortion energies that are connected to a peripheral nervous system. Similarly, as we can begin to disconnect all of the energetic parasites that are connected to the central nervous system. Once we begin to clear the mental field and the emotional field and they become more permeable, it is also easier to detect the body elemental. It's easier to begin to work with these different systems. We have the systems of blood veins, that's a system itself connect to the heart and the brain. We have the lymphatic system that are connected to the lymph nodes. We have the peripheral nervous system that's divided in two. We have the central nervous system that are connected to different forms of brain processes. And we can begin to observe these different forms of energies. And in our double hand position on what we could call the earlier nodal points of the chakra system, but instead of seeing it as chakras and impose all sorts of distortion and ideas upon that, just work with them as bridges or connection points between the different fields of the body, the biofield, the emotional field, the mental field, as well as connection points between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, as well as access points into different functionality of our body, learning to work with the organs themselves and hear what they have to say to us, learn to work with the nodal points and hear what they have of information, what's blocking the connectivity between the different layers of our body, the different fields, how do we work to interconnect the different fields so that we can access them in different ways. And that is done both in what we call horizontal energy work, and as well as vertical energy work, as well as the clearing work with energetic parasites, as well as the clearing work with the inserted prohibiting technologies. So there's a lot to learn. And you will then say, how can I do that if I haven't activated the higher order senses? Well, look at it this way. Most of the times, the reason why, for instance, many people say, I can't see the energetic parasites. No, that's because they evade you all the time. They know how to weasel their way out of your scrutinizing introspection. They have learned how to do that, but they present themselves in your response mechanisms to outer and inner events. They present themselves when you have a kind of energetic exchange with another human being, and the way you respond is both emotional patterns, it's electrochemical as well, but it's also parasitic, either from the person you're talking to or your own energetic parasites, or both. So we can find and detect how we have energetic parasites in our response mechanisms, how we respond to inner and outer circumstances. What are the thoughts we are having in this process? What are the emotions that we have? What are the chemicals that are flushed into our physicality? How do we really, what is the state of the body? Do we feel nauseous or do we feel dizzy, or do we feel happy, or do we feel sad? All of these things can be explored while they're happening. Understanding that these are processes that have been put in motion due to some kind of energetic exchange or activation of different forms of the levels of the fields, revealing the patterns and the content and the systems, and as well as the programs that are running us in that situation and in that moment. And that's how we learn to work in real life with what's going on with the double awareness. Observing what's going on, and that's why meditation is so important, that we learn to focus and function both as silent observation and not have a run-amok brain that constantly think thoughts, and a run-amok emotional field that constantly pumps out electrochemicals into the body due to different forms of schemata or thought process that can either be known or completely hidden because it's part of our subconscious. And that's why again and again and again and again, those who really want to do this work, psychotherapy is a must. There's no way around it. Because how are you going to know how you feel and how you think and what the spectrum of emotions are if you don't know how to utilize them, and if you don't know how to deal with them, and if you have suppressed them and don't want to deal with them because the body elemental just want to keep you in the comfort zone where it doesn't feel this overexcitement other than what it chooses to feel overexcitement for, as desire, sexual desire, emotional desire, or food desires that kind of gives it's the feeling of feel good, that gives dopamine rushes, that gives oxytocin rushes, that gives serotonin rushes. So this is where we learn to understand, okay, And here, for those of you who doesn't understand the different, oxytocin is the connectivity. That's the what we call when we feel good with another person, especially after sex, or in caretaking or caregiving of another life form, whether it's a pet or a dog, pet or a child or a plant or whatever we point our care expanded heart towards, then we produce oxytocin. That's why it's good to learn to be in what we could call kindness meditation, so we can produce it without actually having an object that we project it onto, but just learn to produce it so our body feels nurtured. Serotonin is often kickstarted with different forms of foods, chocolate, other pleasures. That kind of sexual desires are also rising up the serotonin level, but that's imbued highly with dopamine that goes with the expectation of something, and then we get rewarded by it, then it releases dopamine. So we go for things that we really want, and that's also part of the chemicals that leads us in different directions. But these are controlled by electric chemical parasites as well, that are fed by these different rushes that we get into the physicality. So the more we learn to be in introspection while we are still living in the outer reality, and instead of having all sorts of idle thought processes that really doesn't mean anything or lead to anything, or have wishes and dreams of where we want to go, or thinking about a movie or something that is really not of importance, whereas I would say, what is of importance then in the brain processes? Well, that is to observe reality. That is to understand what reality is made of. That is to understand the sciences of reality, not necessarily what general science tells us and what you can study, but by observation, by the interpretation via your higher order senses and your lower order senses of what is reality. Shift between the different states of reality. Learn to view everything as in a spectrum via the different levels of your brain capacity. And then if there's nothing to observe, and if you don't have any need to learn something, then you can silence your brain, and there will be no activity other than what your body needs to keep itself functional. Just be a silent mind that is just there and being content with just being silent, observing the sky and relaxing or something without drifting off and falling asleep. The same with the bodily functionality. When does it need rest? When does it need exercise? When does it need to walk? When does it need to run? And so forth. What does your body need? Learn to listen to the body sensation, clear out what appears to be pain in the body. I talk about that in the advanced energy work as well. Clear that out, because these bodily sensations that tell you that something is going on at that spot or wherever it is in your body that you need to address energetically, because everything that comes into manifestation begins as energy. The same with emotionality. The way we have emotions, the way we are flooded by electrochemical neurotransmitters that comes with either thoughts and ideas, or because we're interacting with either inner or outer encounters, will then initiate different forms of response mechanisms in us, which we interpret as emotions. So with that, again, when you say, well, I want some actual physical exercise here, well, the whole basic 4D energy work. That's all I can give. The rest is for you to discover. Begin there. Practice so many times that you can do it standing up and sleeping, literally doing the energy work, even in your sleep. And then practice it at least 3 hours a day. Then you will see the big difference. Change your way you eat, become a plant fruitarian. Do meditation, calm your mind so you don't have all of this idle chatter going on in your head all the time. Learn to do psychotherapy, work with your emotional field, understand the spectrum of emotions and how you are in the different levels of your emotionality, and how you can transform that into what we call a more accurate interpretation of reality, where you meet it with who and what you are today and not what you were in your childhood or in past lives. And then learn to, also in energy work, horizontally learning to lie down and be so relaxed that you can access the deeper levels of your energy system. Begin to clear that out whether it is via reframing or it's visual content or it's just sensations or it's just bodily sensations or whatever it is. Self-healing, self-introspection, meditation, studies that teaches you more about the physical anatomy, studies about sciences, studies that actually gives you some content to work with, so that once you begin to really observe reality, your brain will have a lot of information it can pick from to begin to combine what you know into new patterns that can lead to patterns of change, as I talk about in the Changemaker material. It is important that we look at ourselves and our body and who and what we are as a tool to learn and progress, and not just being a human that lives to get a car and a house and a boyfriend or a girlfriend and children and get married and have a good life, quote unquote, as the base program teaches us. But instead, see, that could be part of it. But the most important thing is we're here to progress, and we're here to learn, and we're here to learn how to progress, and we're here to transform energy. So let us resume our original purpose. And that's part of the exercise, to have that orientation in everything we do. And that will assist you in the clearing work, because then you will learn to do clearing work on the spot, either via radiation and the fires, as I was just talking about, the white fires that you can clean out things, or you can do the what looks like normal fires. If it's astral energy, you can do blue flame. If it's kind of the cellular level, you can do, instead of fires, you can call it flames. You can do the golden flame to activate some of the original solar system energies of the radiation and vibrational field. You can use the different colors of the frequency fence if you want to clear out different frequency levels of your body. See it as flames that either transforms or burn off and dustify. These are some of either the transmutation processes that leads to a higher state of awareness, or disintegrates what is of no longer of use. And I talk about that in the Transition Science course material as well. So we're here in a little bit of a catch-22. To get to the understanding where you know what I'm talking about here, you need to study the course material. But to be able to work with the course material, you need to do the energy work so you can get there. And many people say, I can't do all of this in one go. And then what is the most important, Randy? Then I would say 4D basic energy work, 3 hours a day, meditation, contemplation on things, learn to use your brain in the way it was supposed to, and not with idle chatter and needless thought processes that has no purpose and function other than just dreaming and escaping from reality as it is. Learn to see things as they truly are. Deal with your psychological issues so you know what your emotional field is made of. Take care of your body with the right nutrition and exercise. Literally do the whole living. That's part of the expansion work, and that's part of what will lead you to the higher order senses. Taking your body into review and your whole life into review, and begin to work with it strategically and in a cognizant way, where you're not just drifting away in whatever processes you have, but you learn to go in and say, I want to administer these different fields. I want to learn to transform these different fields, and I want to learn how to progress these different fields that I am made of. And that's part of the exercises as well, because then you begin to ask in meditation, how do I develop my brain into its higher order capacities? You go into your emotional field and you say, how do I transform my emotional field so it begins to vibrate in alignment with the original reality energies that are beyond the current type of world we have now? How do I expand my vibrational field to oscillate into past, present, and future so I truly and knows and acknowledge everything that I am and can become? And how do I really rediscover who and what I am, and how do I get in alignment with my core essence? And when you work with your body, you ask your body, what do you need, body, so you function in the most optimal ways, so that we can clear out whatever's in the way, so you can communicate to me what you need from me, so that we can work together, so that you can become the best version of a physicality inside this reality. Ask the questions and you will get the answers, not right away, but the way that you live. When you ask these questions, reality will mirror this back to you, as I talk about, both in the transition sciences via the principles, principle 4, but also in the template sciences. Learn to work with the principles in everyday life. There you will see how much looking at reality via the principles will begin to adapt your lower versions of reality perception into a higher, more advanced type of perception of what's going on, as well as how you perceive reality and how you interact with reality. And that will also kickstart your higher order senses. In a way, we can say, to be able to activate the higher order senses, you must live as if they're already activated. It's not wannabe or make up or fake, but you work with the principles that are tied to the higher order senses, that are tied to the higher order levels of your energy system. So hereby, with this podcast 3 here in the energy exercises, I will stop here, and we will continue this work in the next podcast. Thank you.